Hey guys, it's Stephanie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am sitting here contemplating something that I've been contemplating for a long time, and while I'm not that qualified to speak on it, yet, there is a master's degree in history in my future, I think. Um, you know, Other people brought up culture. I think it might have been Geeks and Gamers or somebody like that. Maybe not. A different video that said Star Wars isn't a movie or it's my culture. So it brought me, it made me start thinking about the greater significance of a film, of a series of films, of franchises, stories, sagas, legends, all through history. All right, and I've talked about where Star Wars, the concept, came from before, but let's talk a little bit about what culture is. All right, I'm going to paraphrase it because I want to talk about the problems, all right, that are going on with it right now. Andrew Breitbart, I don't know if all of you know who he was, but he was a massive force in cultural criticism. Years ago, a guy I admired personally because he stuck up for free speech. He attacked those who would shut down and censor free speech, defended people in Hollywood that couldn't get jobs because their politics, weren't politically correct enough. Basically he was the thorn in the nihilistic side of the progressive movement. And since I am a quasi-libertarian, really not on the right or the left, I mean, there are people on both sides that it's like, shut the fuck up. Okay, you are not helping the problem. You are not helping fix it. Go away. Go talk to yourselves in a cornfield. Okay, just go away. That's how I feel about that paradigm. Andrew, who sadly passed away a few years back, said that culture is upstream from politics, which, if you think about it, there's nothing more true in the world than that. So let's talk about culture. Culture is painting. It is music. It is film. It is a play. It is dance. It is a novel. It is anything artistic that should uplift the human that is observing it or taking part in it. It is the creative, to me, and I'm giving you my definition. It is the creative force behind humanity. I mean, if you look at anything from ancient cave paintings, that depicted Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon religion, handprints, animals, to, film today, that is culture. That is something that tells a story, defines a society, how a society explains itself, okay? So, how did The Last Jedi end up being a nihilistic, for want of a better word, piece of shit? And why is Ryan Johnson running around trolling people on, websites with, stupid photographs of his smarmy face, holding up little signs saying your Snoke theory sucks, and all the rest of that shit? He doesn't have anything else to do. He is literally the only one that I can see out there in public defending this, piece of shit that he made. But let me explain why it's a piece of shit. I've been going to movies since I was 4 years old. I think it was the first movie I ever went to. It was a drive-in theater, and I think it was Snow White, or maybe some Disney thing with Julie Andrews. And I know it wasn't Mary Poppins. I'm not a fan of Mary Poppins. I just think it's stupid. I always have. Even when I was a kid, I thought it was stupid. But I've been going to movies and loving movies for decades, right? And if you go back to when Star Wars came out, the 70s was a time of social and cultural upheaval. You had the end of the Vietnam War, the Nixon resignation, gas lines. There's a sense of gloom and doom in the West, not just in the United States. In the West, that was palpable. And movies sort of kind of symbolize that, the grittiness of movies like Mean Streets. If you the Francis Ford Coppola's movie The Conversation, which is one of the first ones that Harrison Ford's ever in, and that's a good movie. I highly recommend it. But there's a grittiness and darkness. Lucas comes around, redefines the saga, redefines the hero's journey in Star Wars, and there's a sense of hope. It basically crushed the nihilism that we were experiencing in the culture and in our society. Society reflects culture, culture reflects society, and politics is downstream of all of that, okay? And Star Wars is based on hope, right? Of virtue, of courage, love, brotherhood, romance, doing the right thing, discovering one's true self, conquering fear. It is all of these things that have been part of humanity since the cavemen were drawing pictures of wild animals on caves. That is that which we aspire to in our own lives. That is what culture should be, and that's what Star Wars is. Okay, so it all kind of bled into the 80s with the end of the first trilogy with the Return of the Jedi. Then you had Indiana Jones, that franchise, and you had film and music, by the way, which wasn't my parents' thing. I mean, my dad watching Prince go up to accepting a Grammy is a highlight in hilarity, because he was like, "What the is that?" And then he got up and walked away, and I was laughing. I mean, but it's still, there was something positive about that music, even if it wasn't my parents' taste, and I do like their music. I love big band music. There's still something positive about it. Even heavy metal with all of its dark undertones. And I do like punk rock. It's my rage music. I mean, if I play it on my YouTube channel, I'm pissed off about something and you know it. It is a good way to express your anger at somebody and something. And but even so, there wasn't this vast feeling of lack of belief. There wasn't nihilism, all right? Because that Johnny Rotten actually believed in something. Not that I agree with everything he stands for, but that he actually believed in something. And, that's why it worked, all right? That's why, because these musicians, David Bowie, Ozzy Osbourne, Joan Jett, Stevie Nicks, Tom Petty, Iggy Pop, all of these great performers in music industry, they had a message, they had a belief system, and that's why you could listen to their stuff and feel uplifted, even if it was Ozzy Osbourne singing to Mr. Crowley. I mean, which is, him being whatever. Even if it's, Iron Maiden, Bruce Dickinson shrieking "Run to the Hills." Even if it's, think about it. Any of the 80s, even 70s performers, there was a lack of nihilism, all right? So we get into the 90s, and I'm going to use two movies as my and some music type and a music type that are sort of my kind of example of when it started to change. You have Steven Spielberg still making movies, Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List. There's nothing really nihilistic about either of them. You know, I think in 1989, the movie The Memphis Belle came out. My father was an 8th Air Force veteran of World War II, so that movie still resonates big time with me. But let's talk about when it started changing and this nihilistic creep started kind of oozing into the corners of society. First off, let's talk about movies. I have a movie called American Beauty, and Kevin Spacey. I want someone to explain to me what the hell that movie means and why it was so popular. It's literally about a man who has no belief in anything. If you think about it, it is one of the most nihilistic pieces of crap ever made, and yet it won all these awards. Why? Then you have a movie that was beautifully filmed, beautifully acted, called The English Patient. Again, it's a World War II movie. It's a love story. It's a romance. It got a very diverse cast, and actually, if you think about it, the cast actually makes sense because there were Indian troops in the British Army. But the problem is this: it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't believe in anything. You know, when you have Ralph Fiennes, you know, telling one of the actors there is no God. When you have it doesn't. There's no virtue behind it. Okay, that's why it's nihilistic. All right, that's why ultimately it is something that is not really as beautiful as it looks. Okay, it doesn't uplift you. The music is great. And Anthony Minghella did a great job directing it, but it's nihilistic. If you think about it. Okay, let's go to the music. I'm going to probably insult some people, but grunge rock is not really good music. It really isn't something that I would listen to because as a former vocalist, I need something that I want to be part of. This stuff, this Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, and all the rest of the stuff just made me, you know, it's depressing and dark, right? Okay, so, you know, that was the music scene. And the lack of talent as you get further into the 90s gets more apparent. People stop playing instruments. People stop really singing once they figured out they could use auto-tune. Okay, and the nihilism in the culture just got deeper. All right, now we're in 2018, and everyone's pissed off about Star Wars, The Last Jedi. You know, Star Wars, even in the prequels, was not dystopian. It wasn't dark. There was you knew at the end of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin would eventually leave Darth Vader behind and turn back to the light, because we saw him do that, right? And it meant something, right? The Last Jedi is a perfect example of the culture that I think Rian Johnson lives in. I think Kathleen Kennedy lives in. I think all this social justice warrior crap, the feminazism, the diversity shit is just strung together social commentary woven into a meaningless plot, and basically it's they think they stand for something and they don't. It's meaninglessness. It doesn't mean anything. It's dark. It's depressing. There's no romance. I mean, I'm sorry, guys. But Reylo is not romantic. It was literally the biggest tease I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, they're not going to have anything to do with each other. You know? Because it doesn't forward the story, okay? And if they try it, it's just going to make everything worse. It was meaningless. That whole thing is meaningless. And it goes against everything that you're being told in the movie about women. All right? So, but that's a whole different argument I've already talked about. But the movie is meaningless. It's nihilistic. And this is why it's not a Star Wars movie. But it speaks to the lack of culture and the lack of beauty that Hollywood has turned into. George Lucas has said it. Lucas said, you know, they make reboots, they make sequels, and nothing's original anymore. He's right. You know, and it goes beyond that. I would expect if Steven Spielberg had written and directed The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi to have a vastly different movie, because he has a belief system. He's an artist with integrity. He's an artist that expresses himself in making beautiful things. I mean, even the scariness that is Poltergeist had a meaning to it that was beautiful. We were talking about Spielberg. So you could expect a movie to have something meaningful in it, a meaningful reveal for Rey. Right now we have a nihilistic, purposeless character because she's Rey Nobody. There would have been a meaningful reveal for Snoke. Right now we have a meaningless, purposeless. Really, Snoke didn't even need to be there. Or if you think about it, we'd have a real reason why Luke, or an explanation why Luke was where he was. Leia would be openly mourning Han, at least saying something. There would be a goodbye, because that's the way you do it. All right? And that is a whole other video about Han's funeral that I'm going to get into. You know, and yet Johnson has a 2 hour and, how long was this piece of shit? 2 hour and a half minutes, and he couldn't fit Han Solo's funeral into it? Like it didn't matter, so fuck it. He's gone. This is literally the most popular character in the franchise. And we're all supposed to go, okay. You know, they want to do fan service, and yet every character that we loved gets screwed over. I just go, you know, and then you wonder why we're pissed. You know, and it was nihilism, you know, that you don't have to say goodbye. That's nihilism. Yes, you do. Here's the deal. Cultures, and religion is part of culture, ever since time immemorial, burying the dead, even, 30, 50,000 years ago, you find burials. There's jewelry with a burial. There's weapons. There are things that the living put with the dead that had meaning. A funeral is as much for the mourners as it is for the dead themselves. The idea that Leia isn't really allowed to mourn Han, that Luke isn't allowed to mourn Han. In the movie he asks, where's Han? And I think I can't remember anymore, and I'm really not planning to see the piece of shit again. Was it Chewie or I think it was Rey that basically said he's dead. Ren killed him. And Luke kind of slides down this thing, and then also we're cut to a different scene. It's like, can we take a second to see what that really meant? You know? And don't even get me started on the whole Luke cutting himself off from the Force. Rian Johnson, you don't know anything about Star Wars. Go stand in the corner. Okay, failed film school student, go. You know, you know, but there really should have been a moment so the audience had a chance to see the impact of that death had on the last two remaining principal characters from the original trilogy. Because as fans, we need closure too, okay? We need to say goodbye. And it would have delegitimized Kylo Ren further, okay? But since Johnson wanted everybody to piss their pants over him, you know, we can't, you know, tell him to fuck off because, you know, horror of horrors that, you know, Disney's little jug-eared, fish-lipped, pasty-faced golden boy, you know, should actually be shown to be the evil douchebag that he is. You know, but so a funeral is very important. Again, the nihilist denies it. But if you buy the book, you get to read about it. Isn't that exciting? How many are going to buy that book? I hope I get a free copy so I can set it on fire. That's what I think of that. You know, it's like a big fuck you. Again, you know, it's the nihilism. And that, I think, the lack of acknowledgement of Han's death, I think really is the biggest nihilistic moment in the film. You know, Luke tossing his lightsaber over his shoulder and it goes down a cliff. You know, you know, Chewbacca's basic, you know, backseat to a bunch of friggin' porgs that, you know, are stupid. It just goes on and on and on and on. It's nihilistic because Rian Johnson's a nihilist. Kathleen Kennedy had an SJW, an SJW agenda, excuse me. That didn't belong in Star Wars at all. You know, I've talked to ad nauseum about women in Star Wars. You know, Amidala's a badass. Leia's a badass. So why does Rey need to be a Mary Sue? Miss Perfect. You know, that's not going to get people to go to movies, and it's a dangerous message for girls, okay? You will struggle, you're human, and girls don't rule, boys drool. We're all equal. We have different things we bring to the table, and it's time to acknowledge that and celebrate the differences. Yay! But you're not going to see a nihilistic SJW purposeless script have that defined. So, you know, I'm kind of rambling now, but that's, I think, one of the biggest problem in The Last Jedi is the nihilism, okay? The lack of feeling, the lack of mourning for the loss of one of the biggest characters in the franchise, the lack of acknowledgement of that. And, you know, is it just the fact that Rian Johnson is just a nihilist and didn't think it was important? Yeah. Is it the fact that maybe these people, you know, maybe think death is never going to happen to them themselves? You know, to me, a lot of these people in Hollywood think they're going to live forever. You know, I'm sorry to say, but everyone's going to end up in a dirty hole. And everything you've done in your life culminates in that moment. You know, maybe you should acknowledge that and honor that, okay? Because when you're about ready to kick the bucket, you're going to want people to remember you, all right? And the people who love you, and there are going to want a chance to say goodbye. And that's society. It's natural. It's what we do. It's what humans do. The fact that The Last Jedi didn't give us a chance to mourn Han is there was no time. Even if there wasn't a funeral, there should have been a moment where people talk about him. Where Leia acknowledges him. All right? Where she talks about something. Anything. All right? She is his wife, for Christ's sakes. All right? And Luke, talking, maybe telling Rey a little bit more about him. I mean, that would have been awesome, don't you think? But no, fuck no. We can't take a moment, but we can sure as hell take a ride through Canto Bight on a worthless mission that went nowhere. That was all nihilism. Okay, it meant nothing. Okay, so I want you all to marinate on what I said. Understand what culture is, and understand that we have a talentless society in the art world now. Kanye West is not a rock star. Jay-Z. I mean, all of that is just marketing. All right, there are very few people that are making money, because music business really is dying right now, that have any talent beyond auto-tune and looking pretty. All right. And the film industry is too chicken shit to actually do anything original. They just do reboot after reboot, sequel after sequel, and hope people go to see it. So, this is Steph, hoping you all kind of can understand The Last Jedi a little better. And have a good day, and see you around the galaxy.